Hi, my name is Tiffany Toko, and I am a graduate student at Ball State University. And today we will be training on the prompting hierarchy. So on our agenda today, we are going to cover what is prompting, the prompting hierarchy, prompting levels, and prompting procedures. So what is prompting? Prompting is assistance that is used by service providers to guide participants toward performing a target response. Prompting is used in the form of demonstrations, touches, instructions, gestures, visuals, and other ways that will increase the likelihood that a participant will engage in the target response. The ultimate goal of prompting is to eventually fade the prompt to increase clients' independence. So for the ease of this training, I am going to be using hand washing in all of my examples, and I will discuss how that will look at each level of the prompting hierarchy. This is a visual of the prompting hierarchy. There are 7 levels of prompting. Starting at the bottom, you have physical, full physical, partial physical, modeling, gestural, verbal, visual, and then at the top is client independence. Now we're going to go into all 7 levels of prompting and discuss what an example of each would look like. So first is full physical. A full physical prompt includes hand over hand, where the service provider's hand is over the participant's hand and is guiding them to complete the target response. So for our example of hand washing, as you can see in the top visual, the service provider's hand is directly over the client's hand and is putting their hand under the water to help them wash their hands, to help them gain that target response of hand washing. Same in the bottom visual, you can see that the service provider's hand is directly over the client's hand, and they are guiding the client to wash their hands. Next in the prompting hierarchy is partial physical. A partial physical prompt does not include hand over hand, but may include a slight physical prompt, such as guiding the wrist to turn on the water or a touch on the shoulder to navigate their arms to the sink. So when we were discussing full physical, that was where the participant's hand was directly under the service provider, like so. So with partial physical, we are not doing hand over hand prompting. We are using partial physical touch. As you can see in the top visual, the service provider is touching the client's shoulder, maybe guiding their arm to the sink. And same in the bottom visual, where the service provider is touching the client's wrist and maybe guiding their hand to turn on the water. Next in the prompting hierarchy is modeling. Modeling is where the service provider demonstrates or shows an example to the participant on how to complete the target response. This can be live modeling or also video modeling, where the participant watches a video on how to complete the target response. So as you can see in both the top and the bottom visuals, the service provider is modeling to the client how to wash their hands. There's no physical touch involved in modeling. It's just showing the client how to emit the target response. So in our case, it's just showing the client how to wash their hands. I also provided 2 video modeling examples, but for the sake of this recording, I'm not going to play both. But it is important to know that modeling can be live, or we can use video modeling to demonstrate skills as well. So those were two videos demonstrating hand washing. Next on the prompt hierarchy is gestural prompts. So what a gestural prompt is gesturing. So an example would be pointing to what needs to be completed without providing any physical or verbal assistance. So what this may look like is like in the top visual, you can see the mom is pointing to the sink, or the service provider is pointing to the sink to gesture to the client that it's time to wash their hands. Another way you could gesture to a client is maybe after using the restroom, maybe using like this kind of gesture. So like, now it's time to wash your hands. So a gesture can be anything that gestures to the target response without using any physical or verbal assistance in that prompting. Next on the prompting hierarchy is a verbal prompt. A verbal prompt is when commands, instructions, clues, or hints or questions are presented to the participant verbally. So just as you can think, and like in my visual, it's basically just saying, you know, wash your hands, or did you wash your hands yet? Or go wash your hands, please. Those would be verbal prompting for hand washing. Next is visual. The use of pictures, signs, or objects that visually convey the target response. Examples of these would be visual schedules, sequencing cards, task analysis, or signs posted. So the two visuals I provided are sequencing of hand washing. These could be posted in the bathroom to remind the child the steps it takes to wash their hands. Also, if you're out in the community, any sign that says, you know, wash your hands in the bathroom would also be a visual prompt for a child to wash their hands after using the restroom as well. Next is what we want all prompting to get to. The ultimate goal of prompting is to fade the prompt to increase independence of the clients. So independence is exactly what it sounds like. It's no prompting is needed by the participant. They are able to emit the target response independently without any assistance. How to choose a prompting level. When choosing a prompting level, a lot of things should be taken into consideration. The learner characteristics and the characteristics of the target response or the skill that you're wanting the client to acquire. Learner characteristics could include the learner's abilities, their likes and dislikes. Example, if the child is visually impaired, a visual prompt would most likely not be appropriate. Or if a child has aversions to being touched, a physical prompt could cause that child to become anxious. So you want to take into consideration the characteristics of the child when choosing what level of prompting to start for a skill. You also want to take into consideration the characteristics of the skill that you're wanting the client to acquire. So you want to think about what is going to be performed and what makes sense for that target response. For example, hand washing. If the child is able to physically come to the sink and turn the water on and they are not refusing, then a full physical or a partial physical prompt probably would not be necessary. You would probably start with modeling or a gestural prompt or a visual prompt. There are two prompting procedures when it comes to the prompting hierarchy. Least to most would include the least intrusive prompt first to the most intrusive prompt. So you would start at independence and work your way to full physical. This is designed to naturally fade the amount of assistance provided during instruction. Each trial begins by providing the student an opportunity to respond to the least amount of assistance possible. The next is most to least. So you would start with the most intrusive prompting and then work your way to the least intrusive prompting. So starting at full physical and working your way to independence. This is most effective for participants who lack necessary skills to complete a task. So if the child is lacking the necessary skills it takes to washing their hands, it would most likely be that you would use the most to least prompting, starting with the most intrusive until those necessary skills are acquired. Then you can work your way to least intrusive prompting until that client reaches independence for that skill. This is a visual showing least to most prompting and most to least prompting. So on your left-hand side, you can see that for least to most prompting, you're starting at the top, you're starting at independence, and you're working your way down to the most intrusive prompting, which would be full physical. And then on the right, you see most to least prompting, where you're starting at the bottom at full physical and you're working your way up to independence. So the summary of our training is there are 7 prompting levels. Prompting is needed for skill acquisition. The ultimate goal of prompting is to fade the prompt and move participant towards independence. Prompting levels are based on the characteristics of the participant and the characteristics of the target response. These are my references. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions or concerns, you can reach me at my Ball State email listed below. Have a great day.